welcome. I'm Elisa Stovall with the IEP Resource Center, and you are in for quite a treat to listen to the team from School City of Hammond talk about their journey into multi-tiered system of support for their district. And I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce your team.
So I'm Heather Pascas. I'm the Executive Director for Special Education and Support Services in the School City of Hammond. It's my first year in that role. Previously, I was Director of Special Education for 4 years. My director is Robert Preboy, next to me. I have my secondary special education coordinator, Kim Lozano, and our assistive tech and special projects coordinator, Jana Marich. I also wanted to introduce to you some folks who could not be here with us today. Most of our gen ed side of this district team is at ESSA in Kansas City. So we did have involvement from our Title I director, our elementary and secondary executive directors, our assistant superintendent, our language development director, and our director of talent development who works with RTI and PBIS, and then our career and technical education director. So a little bit about School City of Hammond, and this is just right off DOE, Compass. These are some of our numbers from the state. And looking at the enrollment numbers, our enrollment is actually lower than this number reflects. I think now we're over around 12,000 students. We closed enrollment, so we lost quite a few students this year. And as you can see, we're a diverse district. We have almost half of our district is Hispanic, and another large portion African American, and then white and multiracial make up the most of our kiddos. And we have a large portion on free and reduced lunch. We have 20 schools, and I broke them down there for you. So we have 2 freestanding high schools, 2 freestanding middle schools, 2 combined high school middle schools, 14 elementary schools, the Career Center, which is the Area Career Center, and then we have another facility that just houses Head Start and some special education preschool. About 2,000 of our students receive special education services. 1,600 receive services as English language learners. We're urban, Northwest Indiana, where we are. We border Illinois and Gary and East Chicago. So we have a lot of transiency between all of those areas. Like I said, we have declining enrollment, and we passed a couple of referendums last year. We're building 1 new high school, and in the future looking to close and consolidate schools. There's a lot going on. So in what led us to MTSS, I would love to tell you that, we were just at a conference and heard about it and thought it would be great, but we actually started on this journey due to being out for one of our Part B indicators, which was we had too many African American students with IEPs being suspended and expelled, and then also our LRE, we had too many students in self-contained placements. We attended a summer institute by the IEP Resource Center where we met Michael McSheehan from Swift Schools, and I just really was taken with his work and enthusiasm in just these increasing inclusive practices and working on MTSS in our district. So that was one of the options given to us to increase or decrease our 52 separate placements and help with our disproportionality. So sorry, this is small type, but you can look there at your print. So the first thing we had to do was get the district's approval. Our cabinet approved to move forward with the MTSS framework. And we had monthly visits with our IEP Resource Center consultants beginning back in the fall of 2017. We took a big bite in the beginning and selected 6 schools, one of which was considered a pilot school. They had a lot of things in place. They had a progressive leader and special ed team there that were already doing a lot of MTSS style programming and resource allocation. So we chose Edison, and then we tried to choose buildings that had a variety of self-contained programming, because we were looking for opportunities to get some of those kids out into gen ed, and then different sizes of schools. So Lafayette Elementary School is much smaller than Harding Elementary School, so we tried to go with either size. And like I said, just remember when I said Edison had been utilizing the MTSS framework, because that's to be continued. We'll get back to that. So the really great first steps that the IEPRC consultants took with our buildings that were involved in this rollout was sat with each school team and completed the fidelity integrity assessment, and that was just a look at where they thought they were in terms of providing, like, are they able to, what were their beliefs on educating all learners, and we got some pretty striking results that honestly kind of slapped central office admin in the face. They didn't really feel like they were getting good communication from central office. They didn't feel like PD was streamlined across the district. So then the district team sat and did the readiness assessment for the district. And I think it was, Robert was with me in that, and I think there was some real honest conversation among district leaders about our folks are kind of crying for help. They need help out in the buildings. So at the next, and we were meeting monthly with groups from these schools and the district leadership team. So at our next meeting, we did a visioning trio activity where our folks in the schools with district leadership identified 6 areas that we thought were quick wins. I think it was about January of last year. What could we do from that point through the end of the year to increase these practices? And it was things like communication. What were the things we were going to do to improve communication? PD, providing resources. We all made kind of appointments and efforts. Some of the district leadership is out in the buildings more than others. So how could those other people be more supportive in the buildings and be visible? And then we also have monthly behavior data meetings where people were reviewing data, and each school had their own academic RTI meetings. A couple of us attended these schools' monthly PBIS meeting and did a rubric with them as well to examine their Tier 1 PBIS practices and found areas for concern and improvement. We had seen over the years the PBIS work had kind of fallen off. We had new principals, and the most telling in those meetings were new teachers at the table when the question would be, your behavioral expectations are posted, and the principal would say, well, yeah, we used to have that. Yeah, we used to have that. And the new teacher would say, we did? I've never seen them. So, very telling. And then the end of the year, we kind of revisited all this work we had done, determined our steps moving forward for the next school year. We identified some folks that were going to go for summer co-teaching, workshops and PD. Things seem to be swimming along fabulously. So we had a little detour in 2018, 2019. We started out fairly strong, started in August. Things seemed okay. In September, I think we experienced we had some unrest. We had the principal at the model school left, and she left the area and took another job. And I think we saw some cracks in what we had thought was a model MTSS school. Things were sold to that staff that hadn't really been run by central office. So we had 2 mild, self-contained autism programs in that building. And instead of, the idea was, instead of having 2, let's have 1 for the most intense kiddos, and let's get these other kids out. There were 9 aides there, so we had the staff to do it. And what the staff was told and what happened was they said those 2 rooms are shut down, all the kids go in gen ed full time. So you can imagine the angry, and Dr. Kathy Pratt from the Indiana Resource Center for Autism consults with our district. She happened to be in town and had visited that building, knew the program, and she got to sit in, I wasn't there, on some very angry staff who felt betrayed and being asked to do something completely out of their comfort zone. So we really had to back that up and do some more PD with those folks. We actually lost one of the teachers due to numbers there, one of the special ed teachers. So there were just a whole bunch of things folks were mad about in that building. So there's a lot of healing. They still don't have a principal. So that we really had to re-examine. We talked with IEPRC. They actually met with our district team who they sat with us and we said, let's go back to square one, because people from the district team were saying, I'm not so sure I'm comfortable selling MTSS. I'm not sure I know enough about it. So Elisa and her colleagues came back and did a training with just that district leadership. And we're really still trying to figure out our next steps. The district is really in limbo. We were supposed to get a new superintendent in January. We don't have one yet. We don't know about our school closings yet. So we're still trying to figure out, do we want to pick one school and focus on one school and put all of our arms around that school and give them the supports? We would love it to be Edison, but there's too much healing to be done there. So that's TBD. So some of the things that are going on, and I'll talk about some things that are on this list, and then I'm going to have Robert talk about repeated reading because he's doing some further rollouts with that. But we've adopted a new code of conduct in our district. The district has received the Lilly grant, so the elementaries are receiving counselors. Edison did have some unique groups that they formed. So the underdogs group was kind of those kids that were socially awkward. So some of our kids with autism, kids who really struggle socially. They had a group that the school psych met with one of the special ed teachers and tried to build their social skills with some of their non-disabled peers. Parachute was another group. They started there where they met with their paras and got input from the paras. We had 9 that were working with those autism programs. So they had been going to general ed with kids, and they had been working in the self-contained room. So what were their thoughts and what did they feel like we needed? And Jana can talk in a minute about the district made a commitment for 3 years to purchase Snap and Read and Co-Writer as kind of universal supports for any student. Buildings and grade levels have collaboration time. There's a lot of mindfulness training. We're working on the high quality preschool inclusion project with IU. So instead of just our self-contained programs at our preschool facility, we do have a class. The 2 classes are actually pushing kids into Head Start with support, and then at one of our buildings, they're pushing out some kids into a Head Start class. We did close 4 self-contained rooms. So the 2 Edison step rooms, and then our 1 high school had a Bridges to Employment program where in the past, kids from all 4 high schools would be sent there if they had a mild disability, cognitive disability as a freshman, and they didn't earn a diploma and they didn't go in gen ed. They sat in 1 room all day. Well, what we saw was, although it was good intentioned, the outcomes were not good. Plus, we had too many kids that were 52s. And then Dr. Kathy Pratt continues to work with us on staff development. She'll work with aides, she'll work with teachers, and she's helping with the healing at Edison. And then we're continuing some of the district teaming on MTSS. But I want Robert to talk a little bit about how he brought repeated reading in and where that's going.
Hello. So I'm excited about this because repeated reading has basically been around for a long time. It's an intervention that just gives students the opportunity for repeated practice of reading. It's as simple as that. And we all know that kids that struggle with reading need multiple reads of a text in order to sort of make a neural model, and it needs to transfer. So you don't get that out of 1 read, 2 read. You need to read it multiple times. So the idea now is to sort of take this repeated reading method and blend it into general ed. So for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in general ed rooms, what we're going to do is have the general ed teachers do repeated reading as a sort of methodology in their classroom. So we're going to give them fluency passages and all kind of resources like that. But the teachers could also create their own. So it's not a program. It's sort of a method. And so with that, we're hoping to get more teacher buy-in in that sense. So the nice thing about practicing fluency is that it doesn't matter where you're at. So you could practice fluency whether you're above grade level, at grade level, or below grade level. So that intervention is kind of holistic. It kind of fits everybody. So you can give, if I'm reading at I'm a 4th grader, but I'm a high achiever, okay, then I'm going to get a higher level passage. So, and that will make those students a better reader. If you're low, then you get a passage at your level. So that sort of will be an intervention, a methodology blended into the general education program for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade across the district. And then from there, the idea is that we know the students in special education or students who are in ESL, they need even more exposure to reading and even more exposure to language like that. So the idea is that would be your tier 1. And then your tier 2 would be, if you needed even more fluency practice, when you did a pull-out group or you worked with your special education teacher, then you could continue practicing it, the same intervention there. So, and that would kind of fall under the specially designed instruction kind of concept for teaching reading. So, and then if you're still struggling, the kids that even get extra pull-out, that would be tier 2, that would be tier 3. So the intervention is kind of, I think it's going to be really good. I'm really excited about it. It works really well in a small group based on some of our NWA scores that we've already kind of trial run it on. So it'll be interesting to see how it sort of takes off and looks on a really large district. Because going from small group setting to suddenly doing it for 500 students is a different thing. So that'll be a little bit of a learning experience. The goal there, though, is to sort of let the teachers start it, and then some teachers will take to it quicker than others. And then, like anything with teachers, teachers influence each other more than administrators influence each other. So you really want the teachers that become the leaders in the building on it to sort of like give them more resources and more praise, because they could then influence their peers. And I know it works because I've done it before, but I think it will catch on. So that's sort of in the sense of how, because even with MTS you still have RTI. So that's the sort of thread that we're sort of trying to build there with that program. So Jenna, you want to talk?
I'm going to let Jana talk about the Snap and Read and co-writer and what that rollout is looking like.
Okay, so the rollout, what it's looking like now is a lot different than what it was prior. We received a grant from Patton's, or Heather and I and a team wrote a grant So we received a district-wide license of Snap and Read, which is a text-to-speech software, and we rolled it out during this time last year. We went to all the schools, we did the trainings with the teachers. You know, we have a lot of Chromebooks out in the district, and it was rah, 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 everybody was excited about it. And then we ran a report at the end of the year, and it was pretty sad. So there was one school maybe that really embraced it, and you could see those kids when they went to the middle school, those were our heavy users. So this year, rolling it out, we took a completely different approach, and we are training students at the schools, little technology trainers. So we take a group of, at one school, it was 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders who really embrace technology, and we train them to become trainers in their buildings. And it's really, really cute. And we've also been working with our ESL group and getting in those students involved as well with our translation. So we're taking text and translating it into Spanish, and they're showing their peers, and it's really been cute.
I think the big key of that rollout was when we started it, we focused on teachers. And that's been even a couple of years ago we started. And then last year we were kind of like, gosh, we have this free software and these folks are not using it. So then we started with some little groups of students who were awesome and learned it like that and would teach other kids. So we have an e-coach with our district who we're lucky enough has joined in and is kind of on the road with Jana training these groups of kids, and it's exciting. You can follow them on Twitter and see the pictures of the excited groups of kids learning those programs. And even I just the other day showed some teachers in a meeting how to use, and they, you know, I said, just the kids will get it. Let them play around with it. They're not scared. Let them play around and they'll understand. So we're still working on that.
And we're going to make some training videos as well, because these kids are really involved in technology, and so they want to do web pages and have videos and, you know, just a really interactive thing. So we're hitting the road, and watch us on Twitter.
Kind of lessons learned, and what I like to say is hindsight is 20/20. I think instead of selecting 6 schools, we probably should have just selected 1 and started there. 6 was a lot. You know, 1 was a model and 2 were supposed to kind of just be participating and taking it all in, and there was really not separation like that. Everyone was on the same page on the team. And something I feel like we still struggle with is more of our district leadership buy-in. You know, people say at the table they believe it, but their actions tell me something different. So you really have to get to the core of, do you believe every child deserves to be in gen ed at some point in the day? And that's a struggle for some people, and that's a huge culture shift for us in Hammond. We've created a lot of programs that have been helpful in one way or another to students, but they've also created, if you build it, they will come. And, you know, oh, we heard you have an autism program and it's so great. Yeah, there's a lot of things that are great going on in there, but what it did was it created a barrier from kids ever getting out. And, you know, we need to think about that, I think, before we continue to build separate placements. Thinking about the Edison, how we could have prevented that, it honestly was a perfect storm, and there's so many parts of that I don't think we could have prevented, but I had a really deep trust in the principal and my special ed team there, and I probably should have been doing more checking if I had to look back on that, because I assumed they were doing one thing and they were doing something a little differently, which we would never have said, take all those kids and just put them in gen ed. The kids who had been in that program for 3 or 4 years would not be ready for that off the bat. That would not have been my recommendation. Also, and I think most districts are still struggling with RTI. You know, it's tough, especially at the secondary level. This year in Hammond, the Title I budget was slashed, so a lot of schools lost their interventionists or had to make a choice between interventionists and instructional coaches. That really hurt what had been going on for RTI. PBIS, just from doing some of the fidelity checks we did, it had definitely fallen by the wayside. So we're trying to continue to strengthen those practices along with the code of conduct. And we're getting a ton of pushback on the code of conduct. It's less punitive, and our teachers and even our administrators are not used to that. They want kids who misbehave out of the room. We know what happens when you send kids out of the room. A, they don't ever really learn what to do instead of what they did, and B, they're losing all that instructional time. So, you know, at some of our behavior data meetings, our data guru for the district attends those meetings, and, you know, I said, put those numbers in instructional minutes. And when they see, I'm hoping, when they see that kids are losing thousands and thousands of minutes, that makes an impact, because you're not A schools. If you're an A school and you're doing that, then that's one thing, but you're not. You know, kids are not making the growth we need them to. Just identifying more of the roadblocks. I don't think we did that. I think we just, I just figured everyone was gonna love this idea as much as I did. And we had overcome quite a bit of staff changes with our district. Even IEPRC had a staff change which affected us. So just a lot of moving parts there. Our district struggles with diversity awareness, and that's disability as well. People will say they are, you know, disability awareness, diversity awareness, but I often see they leave off disability when they're talking about being diverse and embracing diversity. You know, we don't talk about the kids that have been down in the hallway at the end of the room most of their career. There's never enough PD. I mean, you can never have enough PD. Teachers always want more. We've done a lot of special ed 101s with buildings at their staff meetings. We could always do more. And then I think we had a lot of people helping with this, and sometimes it's unclear what everyone's role is. So we have IEPRC, we have our district team, we have even some outside contractors. And I think for me, and I'll take that blame, is figuring out what everyone's role is in the process. And any other hindsight for anyone you think of?
Well, I know for me, especially with the things that I roll out, I do a lot of rah, and then they're not doing it.
Yeah.
So I know we give a lot of PD, but could use more.
Yeah. Okay, and then just some questions I would think for you to think about is, and I don't know what format you would like us to take this in. These are a couple of what's your district's philosophy regarding equity in education? For me, if you don't have everyone that's in charge believing everyone deserves access to quality education and rigor, you're going to have a hard time rolling this out. Anybody want to talk about that? Any questions about that?
Any questions or comments for the group around that first question?
I was going to say, I don't know if it's around that first question, but could you talk a little bit more about the resources you use, the SWIFT school and/or other things that you found were, really good resources for you as a leadership team to be thinking about?
Yep, and I would say that's the place to start. I mean, there's so much in that website alone. And then actually, Elisa and her team brought a video to our district leadership team by George Bash. I don't know what the title of it is, but it was really great for the leadership team to see, because it talked about, you know, you've really got to look at your tier 1. You can't dump all this into tier 2 and tier 3 if your tier 1 is not quality.
What's the name of that video clip? Because it's on our website. Yeah, so we can give you the exact name of it, and then where you can find it on the Indiana IPRC website. She's looking it up. So.
Yeah, I would definitely show that to a leadership team, you know, because I do believe if you don't have that buy-in and that belief, and will we ever get it 100% from everybody? No, but the person at the top has to sell that message. And if you're not getting that from the person at the top, you will have a difficult time with this process.
Another question.
This is more of a comment than it is a question. Your statement about the district's philosophy regarding equity in education, and if you don't have 100% buy-in from the top, I can say that my assistant superintendent is here with me now at the CEC conference. She is a former director of special education, and whenever I've been out to roll something new out into the district, she says, you know, Joe, this can't be special ed. This has to come from central office.
Thank you.
This has to come from central office, as this is an initiative for all kids. This is not a special education initiative. MTSS, RTI, the new dyslexia bill that we're tackling.
Thank you.
She attends all of those rollouts and makes sure that this is a central office initiative and not just a special ed initiative. And that is
come over to Hammond
huge.
and do that's kind of my battle cry. It's like, I can't be the face because for some reason they think it's optional and it only applies to your kids. So thank you. We need more folks like you.
Thank you. I would say that because for most staff, if it's rolled out from quote unquote a special ed perspective, you will have staff who say, oh, well, that's not us, that's them. And we often have to have a philosophical belief that education starts with gen ed first, and then we support with special education services. That being said, it's a mindset shift, and that's why I believe it always has to be central office staff, administration, teachers, parents, and students alike have to be on board with the initiatives that we roll out. If you don't, you will get a lot of pushback because staff will think it's a them versus us type situation, and we can't have that. And then one last thing I wanted to talk about, the philosophy regarding equity. Equity in itself, if I asked 5 people what they thought equity is, I would get probably 7 different answers, even though I was asking 5 people. So that in itself, we have to own our definition as a district of what we believe equity is. And then when we move into buildings, be we're central office staff or administrators, we have to make sure that we're inspecting what we expect. If we say equity looks like this, we have to inspect it to make sure that that's what it actually is.
Love that. Thank you. You must go to your buildings. See, we have, I think, a few district leadership folks that really haven't been out into buildings much. If they go, they're going for a meeting. They're not going into classrooms, and so they're really not. And I think another important point was educating teachers, and Kathy Pratt helped with this, especially at Edison, is we're not making these things up. This is an ESSA. This is, I mean, these are federal indicators that we have to comply with. You know, this isn't just Heather Paskus, the new director, coming in to give you a hard time. No, it's about the outcomes for our kids.
So the MTSS concept framework and then RTI and PBIS, all multi-tiered systems, each kind of touch on different things. How did you define those within your district to help people have clarity over, you know, how all of these 3 types of frameworks fit together, or did you use them interchangeably?
So we did at admin meetings. We started last year with monthly administrator meetings where principals and all the district leadership attends. So almost every month, we had some kind of presentation. We talked about the tiers. We actually created an umbrella, and everyone in curriculum team took something under the umbrella, the social emotional, the academic, the behavioral, and explained how we're now intertwined. And working with our director of talent development, you know, encouraging her to even just, let's not call these school RTI meetings, call it an MTSS meeting, because especially at the elementary level, they would talk academics in isolation. So we had to encourage them, you need to also talk about your kids that are frequent flyers in your behavior. And Robert knows, he started in our district as a behavior specialist. There's not a lot of behavior supports in place, I'll be honest. So there's not a lot of moving to the tiers. It's pretty much, if you're not behaving in gen ed, you're probably ED and you should be tested. So that's an ongoing piece of work for us, and Robert's done a great job training out principals and working one-to-one with principals and teachers on behavior plans and strategies, and so that's still, it's a work in progress. And we have a few new leaders this year already, so it's constant.
If you look at your PBIS, and you know you have your triangle, right? And depending upon how your school is structured and what your behavioral supports are in those things, in many settings your pyramid could be upside down, which tells you that your tier 2 and your tier 3 are not going to solve the problem of tier 1. So in that sense, then you have to push those interventions into tier 1. And the same thing with RTI, and that's kind of how repeated reading sort of grew out of that. We looked at all of our NWA data, and we're like, okay, students in special education aren't hitting benchmarks, students in ESL programs aren't hitting benchmarks, and neither are the general education students. So you couldn't physically take all those kids and stick them in tier 2 and tier 3. No, you got to put that intervention in general ed. So look at your school and understand how that's the strengths of those two systems. And because those, more than likely, if you're struggling, you need to strengthen tier 1. So you can't continue to. So that's what I mean by that. You have to look at those two systems. And if one of them is weak, you'll know it just by doing a survey of how many behavior intervention programs you have going. You know, you could just find out. And if you don't have that many, well, that will tell you right there. So there's that.
Thank you.
I don't need the microphone. The question. As you're trying to roll out MTSS, did you realize that a lot of the pieces were already there, that you just need to kind of put them in a bucket and call it something?
I think that was a conversation we've had to continue to have, even in the beginning with some of the district leadership. In cabinet, I could see the business office like, and I said, we don't have to buy anything. You know, they were sheer panic. You know, we had a lot of things in place. It was just organizing them, and that's where Edison, that's why we chose them, because there's a school psych there she's just real creative and likes to do things other than test kids. Like, she wants to get out there and work with kids, and she had all these, you know, our first MTSS meeting this school year, she presented on the parachute and the underdogs, and they're just doing all kinds of things. And we said, this is your MTSS. You're doing it. You're doing the social emotional learning. You're getting, our aides, a lot of them are community members. So working with that group, you're not only working with students and aides, they're community members. We're educating them on this process.
And I think that is an important piece to remember, that the MTSS, multi-tiered system of support, is a framework, not an initiative. It's a framework for positioning and placing all of the pieces that work for your district in regards to social emotional learning and the academics and so on. And so it's not something we're going to do for a while. It's how we organize what we do in a comprehensive, effective manner. So I do have the name of that video, and if you go to the indianaieprc.org website, there's a learning center there, and under the topic of MTSS. The video is, what do districts need to consider prior to implementing MTSS? What do districts need to consider prior to implementing MTSS? George Batch. Other questions or comments?
Thank you all.
Anything more to add?
Yeah,
No, well, I
it's
want to
been great.
thank the team here. You know, they've had a real honest and open discussion, conversation, sharing about how they have started to move through this process of rolling out a multi-tiered system to support their learners. And it's not always pretty and tied up in a bow and fancy. It's a lot of hard work and thinking and
And
sometimes
it's not quick. And I think that's one thing that, I like things to, it's not quick, it'll take years, so
yeah, if you want to
patience.
do it well, it will take, it takes time. Got to go slow to go fast, and we don't do that in our world very well sometimes. And thank you for your participation. Thanks again to the team.